It started with a silence that didn't belong. The House Oversight Committee chamber was normally filled with voices layered over each other. Pages shuffling, whispers exchanged, the low hum of tension always present. But that afternoon everything stopped. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. The sun sliced through the tall windows of the Rayburn House office building, casting long shadows across the dark walnut table where the lawmakers sat. Each beam of light felt like a spotlight, and all of them pointed toward one woman, Jasmine Crockett. She sat straight-backed, composed, her hands folded neatly, her expression unreadable. But it was the smile, small, deliberate, unshaken, that made the silence feel heavier than any shouting could. On the other side of the table, Liz Cheney leaned forward. Her voice was sharp, clenched in the kind of anger that comes not from impulse, but from conviction. "This isn't a talk show, Representative Crockett," Cheney snapped. "This is Congress. And if you think Twitter slogans and community outrage make you qualified to reshape federal oversight, then you've misunderstood the seriousness of this chamber." Gasps weren't allowed in these rooms, but they happened anyway. Interns glanced at each other, staffers froze mid-typing. Even a few seasoned politicians blinked harder than usual. Liz Cheney, the daughter of a former vice president, a Republican who had risked everything to speak out against her own party during the Trump years, was not a woman people challenged lightly. Her moral compass was respected, even if her tone sometimes sparked heat. She had returned to the Capitol in a consulting capacity after her ousting from Congress, now advising various oversight boards and acting as a fierce voice in public hearings. Jasmine, however, didn't flinch, not even a twitch of the eye. Instead, she took a slow breath and finally spoke, her voice like silk across steel. "Congresswoman Cheney," she said evenly, "I respect the weight of this chamber, and I carry it every day in the stories of those I represent. You see slogans, I see survival." A low murmur rolled across the room like a wave approaching the shore. Jasmine Crockett was not a stranger to confrontation. Born and raised in Dallas, Texas, she had been raised in a home where justice wasn't an abstract concept. It was personal. Her father had been arrested during a traffic stop that went wrong. He never fully recovered. Not from the injuries and not from the shame. Jasmine watched her mother work 2 shifts at a hospital just to afford the legal fees that saved her dad from a broken system. She was 14 when she decided she'd become a lawyer, not just for her family, but for every family whose name never made the news. She put herself through college working as a waitress and debate tutor. Then law school. She took cases no one else wanted. Defended teenagers who'd been falsely accused, mothers trying to escape abusive homes, immigrants terrified of deportation. Her heart lived in courtrooms where hope was rare and justice even rarer. By the time she ran for Congress, she wasn't looking to become famous. She was tired of asking for permission to be heard. Liz Cheney, by contrast, had been raised in the corridors of power. Her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, had shaped the post-9/11 world with an iron grip. Liz grew up not needing to earn the room's respect. She inherited it, but that didn't mean she didn't work for it. She was brilliant, strategic, and relentless. She had stood alone against Trumpism when many of her colleagues folded. And though she had paid for it politically, she wore her exile like armor. In many ways, Liz and Jasmine were reflections of each other. Fierce women shaped by legacy and loss, both unafraid to stand alone. But this wasn't a mirror. It was a battlefield. The hearing continued, but the air between them was electric. The committee was reviewing federal surveillance protocols, specifically those disproportionately affecting Black and brown communities. Jasmine had introduced data showing that facial recognition software misidentified Black faces at nearly double the rate of white faces, leading to false arrests and ruined lives. Her proposal was simple but bold: suspend the use of federal facial recognition systems until bias could be corrected. Liz didn't see it as pragmatic, she saw it as naive. "You are not the first person to believe in good intentions." Liz fired again. "But good intentions don't protect this country. We need oversight, yes, but not at the cost of national security." Jasmine turned to face her directly. This time her smile widened, not out of smugness, but a deeper kind of knowing. "Congresswoman," she said, "I don't need to be the first. I just need to be the last person forced to say the same thing, over and over, while people who've never lived this reality tell me what safety looks like." There was a long beat. Cheney opened her mouth to reply. But stop, she had nothing, because what could she say? Here was the first turning point. What had started as a clash of ideologies was now something deeper, a confrontation between lived experience and theoretical expertise. Jasmine's composure didn't just make her more credible, it made her undeniable. Outside the hearing room, the internet lit up. Clips of the exchange went viral. The image of Jasmine calmly smiling as Cheney's voice rose echoed across social media with hashtags like "Face Smile with Strength" and "Fate Crockett Calm." Meanwhile, two subplots began to unfold in the background. First, inside the Democratic Party itself, a quiet struggle brewed. Jasmine's rise had sparked discomfort among moderates who preferred polished soundbites over passion. Whispers started. Was she too bold? Too blunt? Jasmine had to navigate a dangerous tightrope, staying true to her voice while proving she could play the long game in Washington's ruthless machinery. Second, in her home district, Jasmine faced real pressure. A local activist she once mentored, Lila Dominguez, had launched a campaign questioning whether Jasmine was too focused on D.C. to care about the neighborhood that raised her. Lila wasn't hostile, but she was hungry, and her voice resonated with voters feeling forgotten. These two tensions, one in the Capitol, the other at home, weighed on Jasmine like bricks. Her speeches got shorter, her nights longer. She wondered if her calm was just a mask for the exhaustion growing inside. One evening, after a long session, Jasmine stood alone outside the Lincoln Memorial. Rain drizzled. The city lights shimmered across the marble. She called her mother. "I don't know if I'm doing it right anymore," she confessed. Her mother, ever direct, replied, "If you weren't shaking things up, baby, they wouldn't be yelling." That line stayed with her. The next week, Jasmine invited Lila for coffee, not as a candidate to a challenger, but as mentor to student. They talked openly about the cost of advocacy, about where roots and wings sometimes pull in opposite directions. The meeting didn't end in an endorsement, but in respect. The second turning point came when Jasmine's facial recognition bill passed through committee with bipartisan support. Liz Cheney abstained from the vote, but afterward, she approached Jasmine privately in the hallway. "You're not wrong," Cheney said quietly. "You just remind this building of everything it pretends to already be." Jasmine nodded. She didn't gloat, she didn't smile. But inside, a peace settled. The climax came not with more yelling, but with a letter. Months later, as the legislation moved toward a full House vote, Cheney submitted a written statement of support, not for the politics, but for the principle. She called the bill an uncomfortable but necessary step toward just governance. That statement, from a staunch conservative, helped tip the scale. The bill passed. The lesson: sometimes the calmest voice in the room is the one that carries the most weight. Because yelling is easy, but smiling when the world is daring you to break, that's power. And Jasmine Crockett never broke. She reminded everyone that you don't need to raise your voice to rise. You just need to tell the truth. Then let the silence do the work.